God damn, I need IPA.
This is Beering Ain't Easy, your podcast for beer humor, dad humor, and beer tastings from Texas and beyond. So crack one if you got one and turn it up.
Welcome to Beering Ain't Easy, Season 2, Episode 36, with Ryan and Drew.
Welcome back. We have got an episode tonight. It's one of y'all's favorites. It is a patented Ryan beer experiment. Ryan, would you like to let the listeners know what we got today?
A Ryan beer experiment.
I need to come up with a better title for this.
This took tremendous foresight and planning. Something that we're not good at this, but we've done it this time. I've been stockpiling beers for 6 months for this experiment. So everyone talks about how you have to drink an IPA fresh and how IPAs degrade over time. And I'm not arguing any of that's false, but I want to know, how much do they degrade? So I've been stockpiling St. Arnold art cars for 6 months. So in front of us tonight, we have a 1-month-old art car, a 4-month-old art car, and a 6-month-old art car. And we're going to test them side by side. We're going to see exactly how much this particular IPA drops off as it gets old.
Whoa. There was a lot of self-control involved in that too. Not drinking those beers in the fridge and letting them nicely age.
Not only self-control, but also having to be aware that when we have like family or friends over and stuff, to like be like, hey, don't touch these ones. Like I put painter's tape on them with dates and like stuck them in the very back corner and still was pointing out, being like, do not touch these.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I think there's no surprise. Everybody knows that IPAs are meant to be drank fresh, and they degrade quicker than a lot of other types of beers. So we'll talk a little bit about why they do, and we'll see, a well-made IPA, which today we're featuring St. Arnold Art Car, it's basically like one of my fridge staples. I love this IPA. It's, in my opinion, one of the best just throw down IPAs to have. And we'll see how that degrades over 6 months.
For sure. And it's also, I think, important to point out that it's like one of the more balanced IPAs out there. It's not just like a straight up, hops in your face and nothing else. So it's got a lot of malt backbone for it. So I think that's kind of important for this experiment, at least for now. If this one's interesting, maybe we try it with a little more extreme of an example.
Like a hazy.
Yeah, there you go. I know you can't keep a hazy in your fridge for 6 months and not drink it.
Yeah, that's true. I'll have to go rate it from someone else's fridge that leaves them out to dry. The whole time you were explaining the experiment, and hopefully you'll just have to guide me through it, because that whole time I was just trying to think of a better name for the Ryan beer experiments. And I got nothing. But next episode, I will have something better crafted up.
I can't wait to hear it. I feel obligated to bring this up because you mentioned, like, obviously, yeah, and it's everyone knows, yeah, IPAs drop off the older they get, but everyone's favorite beer fact when they first get into craft beer and they learn the origination of the name IPA. So for the listeners that didn't know, I will giddily tell you real quick.
Sure.
So it was originally when English settlers were shipping beer to India. By the time the beer got there, it was rotten because it took like several months. So they found out that adding more hops to the beer preserved it longer, so it wasn't rotten when it got there, or spoiled, I guess, more appropriate. But so that kind of goes contradictory to what we're talking about. IPAs dropping off. I guess there's a difference between dropping off in quality and completely spoiling.
I'd love to know, like, what type of IPA we were talking about when they first made it. Were we like, big high ABV malt bombs, or were they like nice, easy drinkers? Like, I don't know. I want to know.
Ye old crispy boy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, English hops are like all earthy, and they have like I imagine they were closer to like an ESB than like the IPAs we know today.
Yeah, I can see those lasting a little longer. So I think like one thing that may be interesting as we're going through, right? I think right now, Ryan and I agreed that we were going to start with the freshest beer. So we're starting with a 1-month-old St. Arnold Art Car IPA. So what are the flavors that we're expected to get out of this beer so that maybe we can track them as they get older to see, see what happens to them?
I remember when we were doing our H-Town IPA blind tasting showdown that Art Car in particular jumped out as like particularly grapefruity compared to everything else. Oh yeah. I'd seem to remember it being like a little bit maltier and like maybe like a little bit like not like resiny or piney, but like kind of that little bit of that like a tinge of earthiness. But when we had it relative to all the other ones, like it was just boom, straight grapefruit was like mostly what I got. And having a sip right now, like that memory seems to hold up correctly because that's what I taste.
Nice. Yeah. So the hops we're talking about here are Columbus, Cascade, and Simcoe, West Coast style with some pine notes and a generous dry hopping of Amarillo, Simcoe, and Mosaic. Brings out some tropical mango and citrus aromatics.
I can see mango for sure.
Yeah. That was straight from Beer Advocate, which has a score of 89, which I think is too low.
Yeah, I agree. Bump that shit up into the 90s. Come on.
So Ryan, I think while we're sipping on this beer, you know how we do these experiments. It's always a 50-50 shot that what we come out with at the end of the experiment is interesting or not. So there's always a gamble. We don't know if our idea pans out to something interesting. So just in case it doesn't, I think we need to talk a little bit about the biggest beer news of April. And yes, Ryan, I'm talking about the Bud Light Saga.
I can't wait. Let's talk about it.
All right. So Ryan, what I'm going to do, I've written down a meticulous timeline of the month of April with regard to Bud Light, and I'm going to read it through a news style. And then I'm going to let you come back and maybe dissect some of the moments that, resonated with you the most. Are you ready?
Fire away.
All right. Started all on April 1st. Dylan Mulvaney, 26-year-old TikTok star, also transgender, was given Bud Light as part of a promotional campaign called the Easy Carry Contest during March Madness, where whoever could carry the most beer could win $15,000. Bud Light also gave her a single can of beer with her face on it, and cheers to her transition. Immediately afterwards, it was picked up by different media outlets and spun off a lot of interesting videos, one of which by none other than Kid Rock, who took an AR-15 and while in tears was shooting cans of Bud Light and saying that he was switching over to Coors Light, which we will get back to later. Also, a U.S. Representative, Marjorie Taylor Greene, dubbed Bud Light the queen of beers and also committed to converting to Coors. Then our favorite politician in Texas, Dan Crenshaw, filmed a video of his fridge and opened it up to show that there wasn't Bud Light in there, but there was, in fact, Karbach, which is owned by Anheuser-Busch. Then the best part of this, a company came out with a new beer on the market called Ultra Right Beer. It's currently in pre-production. We have identified it's being brewed by Big Kettle Brewing in Georgia, and you can go online and buy a 6-pack for $20 and pre-order. And to finish this all out, Bud Light, or Anheuser-Busch CEO, came out and made a pretty non-committal statement over the whole thing. There was some fake news out there about the whole marketing team getting fired from Bud Light, which was not true. But we did have one marketing member take a leave of absence, and there's even more spin-off videos of shooting Bud Light, including my new favorite one where a woman shoots Bud Light Tampax tampons and a certain brand of lingerie with a rifle. Been quite a month. What do you think, Ryan?
I hope April never ends. This has been like the greatest like comedy show. Like the amount of self-owns and like lack of awareness around this whole thing is just like, I just can't get enough. I hope people keep posting stuff about it.
I think the lesson that a lot of people learn is if you're going to go bold with a really, really like severe viewpoint on something, you need to make sure you know what you're talking about and fact check what you're going to say, because the internet is usually undefeated when it comes to microanalyzing something.
Yeah, I guess I'll just like kind of go through that timeline kind of in order and just fire from the hip with my reactions to each of those, which, like you mentioned, we were going to bring back Coors Light. Coors Light has been a supporter of the LGBTQ community for like 20 years. They've sponsored like the Pride Parade in Denver, and like they do all this stuff, and they have for a really long time. So the people saying they're committing to Coors Light they're kind of committing to a more progressive, forward-thinking company. So that's funny. And yeah, you mentioned Dan Crenshaw was like, "Oh yeah, I don't have any Bud Light. I just have Carbach, an Anheuser-Busch company." And then
I looked at, I had to rewatch that video, and I looked in his fridge, and what he had in his fridge, he had Love Street, he had Crawford Bock, both of which are Carbach beers. He had Crush City IPA, which is not Anheuser-Busch. He had what looks like a Topo Chico hard seltzer, and he had a Dos Equis in there. So that's what Dan Crenshaw drinks.
I mean, it's a decent spread. I can't fault that. I actually did see the video you're referencing about shooting all the beer and the feminine products and all that stuff. And I think that was posted by your forever favorite Hayes Boys. Is that true?
I do love me some Hayes Boys.
Yeah. Every time I see a post from them, I immediately go to the comments, because the comments are usually gold.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And the first comment I saw was stormtrooper level accuracy right there. I was just like, holy shit, that's amazing.
There are so many videos out there, so many videos of people trashing and dumping out their Bud Light. It's like, it just makes you wonder, like, how many Bud Lights were purchased for the sole purpose of destruction in the month of April.
A lot of them probably had Bud Light, but I'm sure as part of like, making a statement, I'm sure a ton of them bought Bud Light to shoot it, which is like, joke's on you. Yeah,
it makes you wonder, do you think they really saw a noticeable sales dip in the month of April? Like, I don't know that they would.
I bet they probably did for like a couple weeks, but there's been tons of these like boycott this company, boycott that companies before, and they last like 2 weeks and then it's done. And I guarantee it bumps right back to where it was before. I guess the last thing I'll say about all that stuff that you brought up is you did send me that ultra right beer thing when they were announcing it. And my response to you was, I can't tell if this is real or if this is satire.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, that's how far down we spiraled into this ridiculous culture war BS.
Yeah, I think one of the learnings that everyone got, one is you got to come with your facts. And I think there's a whole lot of macro beer drinkers that got a lesson in how many craft beers companies have been bought out by the majors. Like, I think you can't avoid, quote unquote woke beers. So they have to create their own ultra right beer. So, you can't escape the progress.
That is an interesting point about, when all these big, macro distributors started snatching up all these craft beer, and everyone thought it was like, that's actually a good example of when everyone was like, oh, boycott, we're getting rid of all these beers. And now you get to today, and like so many people don't even realize which brands are owned by what. So it kind of worked for them.
The last thing I'll say, when I first saw the Dan Crenshaw video and I saw him open up the fridge and it, appeared to be full of Carbach, I was like, he's a politician. He's got a bunch of like politician aides. He probably called over right when this happened and just be like, okay, dude, I don't even drink beer, but just go fill my fridge with a bunch of local Texas beers. And then the guy like goes and buys some thinking he's doing a good thing, and he loads it up with Anheuser-Busch and jokes on him. That's what my first thought was.
I actually saw Dan Crenshaw out and about one time. Only time I've ever actually seen him in person, and it was at Eureka Heights, funnily enough. So no, I think he was legit with what was in his fridge.
Okay. I have no issue with the Bud Light marketing campaign, but I have no desire to drink Bud Light either. So
So, do you think you want to try out this 4-month-old beer and see what we're working with?
Yeah. Let's move it back to the beer, the real beer. Well, at 4 months, it still pours a nice foamy head. The aroma's still good. I do get a little bit of taste difference.
I do as well. I think everything's just like a little bit more muted.
Yeah, that's a good example.
It seems almost like oily on my tongue. Like after I swallow, it seems like it just doesn't finish as clean. There's just like a weird kind of, I don't know. It's not like an aftertaste. It's just like it feels weird on my tongue.
When I did my research and I was looking at what should you expect in a degraded IPA, number one on the list is the hop flavor and aroma degradation. So I don't think I got much aroma degradation on this one, but it doesn't pop as much. You don't have that freshness that you get with that 1 month old art car. So a lot of the hop compounds are volatile and can degrade relatively quickly over time. And so that can be accelerated by exposure to oxygen, heat, and light, which we did not expose our beers to any of those things. But you can diminish the things that make an IPA great, can diminish pretty quickly and not be quite as enjoyable. Still good, though. At 4 months, this is still a good beer.
Oh, yeah. If I wasn't having it side by side with the fresh one, I'd be like, yeah, it's whatever. It's fine. Like if I thought about it like too hard, like this, when we're sitting down and really thinking about it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess it's like not quite as good as I like think of it as. But yeah, definitely no like off flavors that stand out or anything like that.
Yeah, one of the other things they said in older beers is oxidation can get you right. They're more susceptible to it, but I think with a brewery like St. Arnold, I don't think you're going to get that like you may get with some other breweries that don't have as refined brewing techniques.
Yeah, and I don't get any cardboard.
I think one thing that this art car has, like you said, it has a nice malt backbone to it, and malt actually helps stabilize IPAs. So when you have a low malty beer and lower alcohol content, high alcohol content is something else that adds stabilization. So if you're drinking like a high ABV double IPA, like maybe like a Maharaja or something like that, it's going to last longer than a lower non-malty IPA.
Yeah, I mean, like just look at what gets aged, what's in people's beer cellars. It's all barrel aged stouts, and yeah, that's exactly what it is. Barley wines, yeah, it's all the high alcohol content that keeps bacteria from developing.
All right, well, I feel like we should just crack open the oldest one. I just want to know. 6 months. That's usually, isn't that like kind of the traditional, what an IPA, when, Stone does the drink, best before dates, do they pick 6 months out? Is that typically the date?
Well, I know the rule of thumb for IPAs, yes, is 6 months, but the Stone best before or drink by, that was a little different because they did like no filtering. I don't think they did any kind of like preservation on it at all. So it was like, you got to drink this in like a month. I think it was something a lot sooner than 6 months.
Oh, I gotcha. But 6 months is kind of the industry accepted shelf life for an IPA, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've always gone by. I don't know if that's widely accepted, but
Ryan, I'm looking to you to be the expert here. So I'm just gonna say it confidently.
I feel like the fact that you thought it was 6 months was just me like pushing that on you.
I did start out talking about the Bud Light stuff, saying that if you're going to come strong with an opinion, be ready for the internet to rip you a new asshole. So I'm ready. My body is ready.
Yeah, we should listen to our own advice.
Yeah. Beer ain't easy. Talks a bunch of bullshit about beer. It is a beer and BS podcast. What do you think on the 6 monther?
I think I'm getting like a hint of that cardboardiness on the aftertaste, but like I had to go back and forth with the 4 month a couple times to really pick it out. Like it's faint. Like in a blind tasting, it's a straight up 50-50 shot for me if I could pick out which was 4 and which was 6. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I don't see that much of a drop off between the 4 and the 6, but definitely a differentiation between the 1 month.
Yeah.
I just did fresh pours on both the 4 and the 6, and the aroma is not quite as strong on the 6 months. So I think we lost a little bit of aroma. I think the one thing that jumps out to me on the 6-month-old beer, like you mentioned the cardboardiness, but I think what I'm missing is I'm losing the citrus. So some of the mango and the citrus flavors that kind of go away. So I taste the malt, it tastes hoppy, but I don't get those flavors that pop in the fresh one.
It's funny you say that, because as you started that whole spiel, I had just finished going through the 4 and 6 months back and forth a few times, and I went back to the 1 month and took a sip of it, and it kind of was a shock to the system. I was surprised how much it popped after having those other ones.
Oh yeah, I just did it too. Yeah, drink your IPAs fresh, people. No surprise here.
So, this is turning out to be the least interesting episode ever.
So we talked about hazies at the beginning, because I think hazies are notoriously like the fastest degrading beers on the market when you get those like real hot bombs out there. But I think like hazies are a little different because they go from like extreme harshness to like a really sweet spot that's, I usually think of like the 4 to 8 week or 4 to 6 week range. And then it drops off pretty fast after that. But Ryan and I just recently got really, really fresh double dry hop Ghost in the Machine. And we drank it. What was it, like 2 days? I think it was 2 days old.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't want to say this because I love that beer, but it was downright almost unenjoyable at that stage it was so harsh. But I know that when I drink another one, it's going to be glorious. What did you think about that?
I love me some hop burn every once in a while, but this was not that.
2 day old. Holy shit. Honestly,
it kind of ruined the rest of the night for me. I just felt so gross after that.
Yeah, it wrecks your esophagus. I swear to God.
Yeah, but I haven't had one since.
Yeah.
And now it's been about 2 weeks, and I'm very excited. Now that you bring it up, I may have one after this episode.
Yeah, I'm totally having one this weekend, and then I'm gonna do it like 1 week at a time after that, and then it's gonna be my own like personal experiment. But
yeah,
the reason that a lot of the New England IPAs, are hazies, they're typically unfiltered, unpasteurized, and they're more susceptible to spoilage and microbial growth. So you can get some bacteria up in those bad boys. And
so let me jump in and provide a little more color on that.
Okay.
So usually when you move the wort over and you do the boil, you add the hops, and the earlier you add the hops, it adds bitterness. And the later you add the hops, it adds the juiciness and like the aroma and the color. So basically the hazies, you add everything at the very end, which, speaking to that microbial growth thing, if you're boiling it forever, you're kind of sanitizing all those hops. But if you add it all at the very end, you're not as thorough in killing off all the bacteria. So that's why you have a lot more of a chance for it to go bad.
Nice. Taking it to the next level there. The other thing that like I think of in hazies that like sometimes happen like after a couple months is like sometimes you like pour it and you look at the bottom of the glass and you got like a bunch of hops like floating down there and it makes like a crust, and that just grosses me out. I love me some hazies, but like when I start pouring out hops, like I'm like count me out, bro.
Have you ever like popped just like a straight up hop pellet in your mouth before?
No,
like one of those just like compressed pellets.
Sounds terrible.
Oh yeah, it's awful. My brother made me do it one time, and I was like, oh, whatever. No, it's horrible. Don't do it. Like it smells amazing, and then it's just straight the most bitter thing you've ever put in your mouth.
I did look up like what are the fastest degrading beer styles, and so hazies were number one on the list. IPAs and then pale ales after that. But then, our fruited sours, those are notorious for not lasting a long time because they can, if they're not, they can continue to pasteurize and spoil. So those fruit bombs can, for sure spoil even faster than hazing if not done properly.
Yeah, that fruit grows mold in my fridge in like a week. This tracks.
Yeah, and if you put it in a hot car or something like that, then watch out, baby. That thing's gonna blow. So I think we need to put the Beering Ain't Easy branded sweet spot for a standard IPA. What would you say, Ryan? Would you say it needs to be less than 4 months? Or are we saying 3 months and less?
I mean, definitely less than 4 months. Unfortunately, we don't have a big enough sample size to make that call, but yeah. If you're looking for hard-hitting news, look to the Beering Ain't Easy podcast. The fresher, the better for IPAs.
You heard it here first, folks.
Since we're talking about the ages of IPAs and obviously validating the thought process about how they have to be fresh, I have to vent a little bit to you, Drew.
Okay.
It's become popular. I mean, it's been popular, but people selling their 6-packs in like the little cardboard boxes all wrapped up. And so you're walking through the grocery store and you can see them and they're in these little boxes, and that's cool. But a vast majority of the ones that I see when they do that, they don't put the canning date on that box. So you have no idea when that 6-pack was canned. So that's burned me before when we get this box and you open it up and it's an IPA and it's already 3 months old and you just bought it at the store.
And you don't want to be the asshole that opens the cardboard box, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'll become that guy. That's becoming my MO on this podcast, is when I learn something new from one of these experiments, I just turn into a pretentious asshole about it.
Well, I mean, we heard it in our last episode with Asa. I mean, he said like he checks his dates in the grocery store and he guarantees his IPA dates on tap at the Flying Saucer because of the same reason that a 6-month-old art car is not going to have the same untapped rating as a 1-month-old art car.
Apparently he knows what he's doing. I mean, did you see the announcement of what Backfish is becoming?
Oh, shit. No, I didn't.
It's going to be Saloon Door West. It's going to be an extension of Saloon Door.
Oh, no way. That's the best news that I've heard all week.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous. I got to be honest.
Oh, dude. Speaking of untapped ratings, I forgot to ask you the most critical question from our Bud Light discussion earlier. Ryan, you notoriously have rated Bud Light a 5 out of 5 on Untapped. With no shame. Has this Bud Light Saga in the month of April changed your rating enough to where you're going to go back and re-rate your beer in Untapped?
I'm going to get extremely angry and drop it to a 0. And then 2 weeks later, after the news cycle changes and I'm over it, I'll put it back to what it was before.
That sounds about right. Welcome to America. It's great here. Stay a while. All right. Ryan, I think this episode has run its course. This has been another one of Ryan's rad research. This has been another one of Ryan's rad beer research episodes. Or if the listeners want to come up with a better name for this bullshit that we pull off on the podcast, submit it to us. There's a good chance we'll just adopt what you have because it will be better than what we've come up with. But in case you've forgotten, Big Macro has taken over everything. So when you think you're shooting the right beer, make sure that you line up that shot. And you make sure you know what you're shooting before you get out there and put a gun on social media. Ryan, would you like to close us out today?
Yeah, I noticed you stumbled through the beginning of that a little bit, which I have a confession. Speaking of this beer, I thoughtfully chose the words like degrading and dropping off and stuff because my dirty little secret is I can't say the word deteriorating
Nice.
And I did not want to say it on the podcast, so I avoided it the whole time. So you just heard me say it once, and I won't say it again.
We'll see y'all next time. It's become tradition.
This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production out of Houston, Texas. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook or at our website at crossthestreamsmedia.com, where you can find our podcast and all the other great sister podcasts on our network.
This has been a Cross the Streams Media Podcast.
Have you seen the news articles about the increase in bird strikes on planes at airports?
No, I haven't.
So there's been a few in the past couple weeks, and everyone's speculating. It's like, oh, plane engines are quieter, and just birds aren't able to hear them, and they're getting hit. They're getting in more engines. But no, you know what my theory is? When they introduced this project way back in the day, they had plenty of time to train up these pilots on these bird drones, and now all of them are retiring, and this new crop isn't experienced, and they're not used to looking out for planes. They're busy looking in your window. So these new guys are gonna have to keep their head on a swivel.
That's the only logical explanation.
Duh. Seems so easy. Yeah.
I love how we went from like the flying saucer, like a legit podcast episode, to this. This has been another one of Ryan's rad beer. I can't even say it.